Noya-Inspiration Nation, hello. Lee Kemp here for another week on a podcast with Jose Noya, and the returning, he is back with us, Ryan Boniface. How are you, Ryan?
Good. Just like Jesus, I've returned on Easter week. Everyone's reason to listen to this podcast is back.
Oh,
That's
I
the
love
only
that.
reason I'm here. Only reason I'm here.
The only reason I'm
It's only why it
here.
works.
Jose,
It's a
how are
miracle.
you?
Only joking, of course. Only joking, of course. You guys are the best.
We
Good
apologise
to
to
have you back,
everyone
Ryan.
for the decline in quality that will resume this week on the podcast. After many
Correct.
weeks of Jose holding the talking stick, I'm going to come forward with a subject that is not a chapter from Stephen Covey's book. We will get back on that, I'm sure, though, Joe, if I'm right. This week, I want to talk about what you can control. And we've got a number of different podcasts where we've taken different twists on the circles of control, what you can't control, putting things out of your mind and not stressing them when you can't. And I want to talk about the flip side of that, which is what you can control. And I've got an example on this of something that's an epiphany, in fact, I had this morning around this sort of thing, which I want to talk through and then get a view from you guys and some examples on it as well. So to start with, the what you can't control. So circles of control. Joe does this brilliantly. I used to have there was an office that had this on a flip chart, and I used to flick back to the same diagram time and time again for the example, which is a circle on a bit of paper, and what is in that is what you control, what you influence, and what's outside of that, which is normally much bigger, is all the things you can't control. So what's the weather going to be? What's this person going to do? How's this person going to react to this? When will such and such happen that someone else is doing? Lots of things that you can worry about and build plans around and build contingencies for, but all of which is completely outside of your control and you should not be worrying about. Fair assessment on circles of control, Jose?
Yep, it's all good. Very good, in fact.
I'm in a different, not that anyone can see because I've just got my background up, I'm on a different locale today. I'm just going to try and change things because the screen I'm looking at, because I only have one screen, I've got a delay of what I'm seeing, so I might need to just come back to you guys on the main feed, so I'm not looking at a delay because it's very off-putting. Anywho, and I think conversely, there's almost that human nature bit. We talked about this a little while ago. I think it was Jose, it was you and me when Ryan was on his little excursion, where we talked about the fact that almost, the defence mechanisms kick in and there's a human nature around certain behaviours that you almost have to try and fight and turn the other way. And I think somewhat the self-control falls in that, where you almost... It seems to be something generally people fall into the trap of trying to control all those things that are outside their sphere, and you have to fight against it. I think the converse is you can be almost blind to the things you can control. So where you've got to not focus on the things you can't control, I think you almost have to be as conscious of dealing with things you can control. And it's very easy to put up walls and barriers and excuses to not control the things you can. Ironically, well, sometimes you're going to grab hold of the things you can't control. And I was doing a bit of this, and I'll use a real example. We don't normally touch on the work stuff, but this is quite generalised, where for the last few weeks, I've felt a bit less organised than I want to, and a big part of that is how many meetings and what's in the meetings are in my diary in each day. Now, every single one of them that I'm in adds value and it's worthwhile time, and I'm glad I do them, but I'm feeling a little out of control of my time. And then it just suddenly struck me that I need to take back that control of my time. I'm responsible for what's in my diary. I agree to everything that's there, and I can rejig how it's look and how it's set and how it's done. And I've actually set some time out this week where I'm going to take a step back for an hour, almost have a list of what I need to do and a blank diary, and slot stuff in a logical way just so I don't have that out of control feeling. But for a few weeks I've almost been putting it down to, there's so much going on, but actually that is one of the few things that's actually completely within my control, or certainly a vast degree of it's in my control, that I can talk to people about what's going on. And it kind of led to this line of thinking of, the irony of not taking control of what you can control, whilst also trying to take control of all the things you can't control. And I think, as much as we've talked about that, avoiding those things that are outside your circle of control, I think you have to be just as aware and put in just as much time and just as much energy to grabbing those things that are in your gift and absolutely putting your energy there and maximising them, and not falling into the trap of seeing you don't control those things. So enthusiastic nods. And I say, I very much not only am wanting to, demonstrate from my actions that I'm doing that, but I think there was a little period of time there where I almost was being a victim of something that I'm completely in control of.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with you there.
And I don't know if there are any similar occasions that you guys have felt this, or things where you've realised you do control things, or you do it quite well, or actually you're thinking, oh, S word. Ryan, by the way, Joe did an actual S word on the podcast last week. It was a milestone moment.
You missed it. It's because you weren't here, Ryan.
Moment.
Was it read in context of a book, or was it his emotion?
No.
His own emotion of his own actions. I know.
Yeah, been influenced. I do have a little few things on this, by the way.
Okay, I will stop badgering you and let you talk about stuff that people might like to hear. Obviously, they like the badgering you aspect as well.
So this is really interesting because I love the circles of, I think Stephen Covey called them influence and we call them control. Very similar things, because that's where the inspiration came from, right? And even today, well, actually, my daughter needed a big favour from me. Now, with the circles, and I remember Lee drawing these, because you had the centre one was you. You can control yourself. And then as you go, the circles go outside, then that's the influence, right? So the closer the circles are to the centre, the more you can influence. But you can't control it, but you can influence it. So my daughter, so she can influence me because she's my daughter, right? But she can't control me, right? Because she's not me. Because the only person really that anyone can control is yourself, right? But you can influence other things. Now, we do get caught up in this whole trap of, like you said, Lee, of trying to think we can control things we can't control. And absolutely right, we tend to not really focus on the things we can control, because we want to put excuses in the way because it's difficult. It's hard, right? We might think, oh, well, I've actually got to dedicate some time to control my time, in which case I need to set aside an hour. But I've got all these things to do. But what I do refuse to do is actually sit down and actually prioritise these things, right? Because you have to be disciplined, and that takes time and effort. And when things take time and effort, of course, the brain, we already know, the brain already goes to easy. Wants easy way. It always wants the easy way. So the key around all this is, it's not always the easy way which works. It sometimes has to be hard. And going back to the story of my daughter, she needed me to do something that was really, really important. And the way she influenced me was to say, Dad, I really need this thing because it's from my university. And it was a big thing. It was like, there was a time extension needed. And so my daughter requested, but they refused it, so I had to get involved. Now, I was in the middle of editing the podcast, I had loads of things to do. But because in my hierarchy, my daughter is very important to me, of course, I dropped everything to do it. Now, in that way, Lauren could not... Oh, sorry, my daughter, I said the name.
Anonymous, your anonymous daughter.
My daughter... So my daughter, does not control me. I could say no, but I didn't. I said yes.
I bet she has a different view on that, by the way, Joe.
What's that?
I bet she has a different view on whether she can or can't control you.
What do you think? What you think?
Of course you can.
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Because I would do anything. I mean, but the truth is that, I do have a choice, right? I could say no. I could say no. I could do no. I could say no, I'm not going to do it. Of course I could.
But your want to say no is much less than your want to say yes, right?
What is that, Ryan? Sorry?
Your want to say no is much lower than your want to say yes.
Yeah.
Your ability to say no is hard. It's lower than it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to do it, right? It's hard, right? Because I had a lot of things going on, but I did it because of the importance of the matter, and to help my daughter, because it was difficult at the time. So that's what I did. So I did drop everything, and I did this thing to help. And in that way, this shows you that my daughter did not have control of me, but could influence me heavily because she's my daughter. So, I could have said no, in which case there was no control there. So this is the thing. So I suppose there's the answer in terms of the example that I've had very recently, in terms of, having to drop. I drop things. I chose to drop things and put things back because of that. But then I had control over myself to do the hard thing, that I knew I'd be behind on certain things, but I was willing to pay that price to help my daughter. And that's exactly what I did. So that's really little stories happened very, very recently in terms of where we can control. I can only control myself. And from my daughter's perspective, that she can only control herself, but she can influence me because I'm her dad, right? And that's really, but it doesn't go that. Sometimes in some of our family, it may not, that hierarchy may not be there. And in other situations, that may not have happened. And so depending on the importance of the matter, I might have pushed back and said no, in which case my daughter couldn't have done anything about that. Absolutely nothing, because I would have to do that activity. So, yeah, and I think we lose control of that. We do tend to think, oh, well, because they're my daughter, I can say, well, do that, and I'll do it. But that is not necessarily the case. And when people push back, that's when we get frustrated as people, because we think, well, you should do it because of X, Y, and Z. But it doesn't always happen that way. And I think that's where when you have a model of the circles of influence or control, that's you go, oh, okay, I recognise now why that's not happening, because I don't actually control them and they are saying no. All I can do is heavily influence that. And other than that, if they say no, there's not a lot I can do. I've just got my hands tied and I've got to wait, or I've got to just try something else. So, yeah, this is really, really important, because we can get super frustrated and waste a lot of psychological energy on trying to influence things or trying to get things done when they're not actually in our control. And likewise, when we want to do things ourselves, we put excuses in the way because they're hard. So they're my two elements of that. So that's my explanation. And thank you, everyone, for joining on TikTok, by the way. Thank you very much. There you
go. And I think that second bit is the often unseen bit. Is in fact all that energy you can refocus it, if you like, into the things you can control or the things you can influence, to get the results or get what you're looking for, or take more control over what you're doing. With me, it's just get a bit more control, sanity, effectiveness, if you like, over time.
Sometimes controlling emotion, isn't it? Sometimes it's like, it's like
100%.
The emotional control. Yeah,
your reaction, you can deal with that. You can't deal with someone else's reaction to you, but you can deal with your reaction to a situation 100%. Returning Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I'm a firm believer in that you can't always control what happens to you, but you can control how you react to what happens to you. And I think we've spoken about things like that before. Like as an active example that you guys have both used, like I've been away, as we all know, we keep making jokes about it. Yeah. And my work emails are a joke because I spent so much time away from my day job whilst also trying to half juggle my day job that I've fallen unbelievably behind. There were times where I would marvel at the state of Lee's mailbox years ago, and I'm worse than that. It's now worse than that. So I've become the one thing I set out to destroy. And
you become the thing you wanted to destroy. That's brilliant.
That's a Star Wars quote, Joe. And what I'm struggling with is gaining the motivation to tidy it up, because there's some semi-important stuff in there that I should probably be looking at, but nah, it's all right, I'll do it later. And that's my procrastination in me, and that's something I need to get better at controlling, because I can control that.
Yeah.
What's difficult is I wanted to take this week off work again, as the working example we're using, but my boss is off work this week because it was Easter last week, and that makes it very difficult because